Hi all, apologies once again that I am unable to be with you today. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions, please get in touch with me via Teams. So, to get started, here are 4 questions for you to answer as always in your exercise book or notepad. I'll give you 4 minutes to answer them, then we will go through the answers. As always, it's not an exercise in just looking up the answers in your notes. Try and remember what the answers are. If you can't remember, leave it blank and fill in the answers in a different coloured pen and make sure you are reviewing the material regularly. Okay, 4 minutes, away you go. So, question 1. What is meant by eustatic change? Hopefully you put something along the lines of this. So when sea levels rise or fall, usually due to changes in the cryosphere. But it could also be due to changes in thermal expansion. So we know that due to global warming and climate change, the global average sea temperature is increasing, which is causing thermal expansion of our ocean, increasing the volume, which is increasing the sea level. Number two, what is meant by isostatic change? Well, it's to do with when the land rises or falls relative to the sea. So, for example, isostatic uplift. And that was due to glaciation and the impact of the weight of the glaciers pushing down on the crust. Question three, what was a submergent coastline? It is a coastline where there's been a relative sea level rise. Okay, so that's something that we had a look at in one of our very first coast lessons. And finally, something from globalization. What is meant by westernization? Well, it's the process by which a society or country adopts the culture, practices, and institutions of Western Europe and North America, such as fast food, free trade, and democracy. So, well done if you got all of them correct. As I always say, if you're struggling to remember these key terms, use Brainscape to help you practice learning them, as well as the revision notes on Teams, as well as your booklets and everything else that we do in class. So last lesson, we focused on some processes that affected relative sea level, specifically eustatic and isostatic changes. Today we're going to focus on what sort of coastlines have formed due to sea level change by looking at emergent and submergent coastlines. Some of these will hopefully be familiar to you, as we had a look at some of them at the start of the coast topic. Now, before we do that though, last lesson you were asked to write a plan for this essay question. What I would like you to do is have a go answering this question under time conditions. Before you answer it though, let's bug the question. So please write it down now in a notebook or your exercise book if you have not done so already. So, bugging the question. So our command word is assess the contribution. So we need to consider how important something is compared to other factors. Our geographically important words are geologically recent, eustatic changes. So thinking about recent sea level change due to changes in the volume of water in oceans. Also, it's UK coastal landscapes. So we should be using case study evidence from the UK. So ignore the Jakarta reference in the plan. So, think back to the lesson before Christmas on answering essay questions in exams. What is the contention of this question? Whenever you have to assess the role or assess the importance of something, you're going to be expected to bring in counter arguments. For this example, it might be that eustatic changes are only contributing to certain parts of the UK, or that certain areas are under more threat than others. For instance, Norfolk and Humberside, where we saw in the previous lesson how those places will be affected the most due to sea level rise. However, as you will no doubt appreciate, other factors contribute to UK's coastal landscapes. So there is a lot of scope to include other information. Also, don't forget to use your geographical lenses to help evaluate and compare factors to decide which is contributing more. It might be that some things are contributing on a larger areal extent, or certain things are occurring faster than others. So enough of me going on. I'm going to give you around 18 minutes to answer this. Away you go. So that's been about 18 minutes. Now, if you'd like me to have a look at your essay and provide feedback, please let me know. Now, on to emergent and submergent coastlines. Now, if you look through the Hodder textbook, you'll find a table that looks a bit like this, and it looks quite off-putting. I don't want you to worry about regressions and transgressions. That is content taught in A-level geology, which I know some of you will be upset about missing. Instead, I want to focus on these two. Isostatic falls in sea level, producing emergent coastlines, and eustatic rises in sea level, producing submergent coastlines. Now, on page 30 and 31 of your booklets, you have some different landforms, and we need to decide if they are emergent or submergent, as well as making additional notes about processes that contribute to the formation. So you might find it better for the additional notes to write them down in your exercise books or notepads, because there is not a lot of space in these booklets, so I do apologise about that. So first up is a coastline called a ria, which forms when sea levels rise and they flood a river valley. And the result is almost always an estuary surrounded by many hills that once was the valley. So an estuary being where the river meets the sea. And the ria is also known as a drowned river valley. So do you think this is an emergent or submergent coastline? Well, if you thought submergent, then well done. Rias are an example of a submergent coastline, the clue being sea level has risen. So for example, we've got the Kingsbridge estuary in Devon, and it's an example of a ria because there are arms in the estuary, these features here on the map, that are called creeks, and some of them can be between 500 to 1,000 meters wide, but some of them are also maybe 100 to 200 meters, so they range in scale. But what is important to note is that they're only small streams. They do not have enough erosive power to form these valleys, these creeks here. So no significant rivers run into this estuary. They're just a collection of small streams. And so the small streams could not have eroded the wide valleys to form these creeks. So what has happened is sea level has risen, and that has pushed the sea inland, drowning what once were probably relatively small V-shaped valleys to form a ria. Now, last lesson we spoke about how relative sea level rise and fall is a combination of different factors. Now, we're in the south of the UK, and so isostatic adjustment is also contributing to this. Devon is sinking. So this is an area of isostatic subsidence, where the land is sinking as a result of glaciers melting. Rias are also economically important as they can provide shelter for ports. Now, the examiners want you to understand and appreciate that other processes contribute to the formation of this type of coastline. It's not just to do with sea level rise. The fact that rias are present is a reflection of there being a fluvial or river system here. It's really important if you want to achieve top marks to mention all processes that contribute to the formation of a type of coastline. So for a ria, mention it's a submergent coastline feature due to sea level rise, but also that it's formed due to sea level flooding V-shaped valleys that were originally formed due to rivers. So when you're talking about what processes have contributed to the formation of this coastline, it's really important to mention both the fact that we've got these eustatic changes, this sea level rising, but also originally there had to be V-shaped valleys formed by rivers. Now, a fjord is similar to a ria, but where a ria is formed due to sea level rising flooding river valleys, a fjord forms due to sea level rise flooding glacial U-shaped valleys instead. For the glaciologists in our room, you may have called U-shaped valleys a glacial trough. So it's just another name for them in case you were wondering if you stumble across this term when revising or reading some other material. So if we have a rising sea level causing U-shaped valleys to flood, we have another submergent feature. Similar to RIAs, isostatic adjustment also occurs in these types of coastlines. However, there is a distinct contrast in the type of isostatic adjustment occurring. If there were originally glaciers here, which were responsible for making the U-shaped valleys, then the weight of the glaciers would have caused the crust to sink into the mantle. Now that the glaciers have melted, we have isostatic rebound, causing the land to rise again. So many fjords in Norway are slowly rising, causing the fjords to become shallower each year. So in Norway, for instance, they're becoming shallower by a few millimeters each year, which contrasts with the RIA coastlines in Devon, in southern England, which are still being submerged because that's where we're having isostatic subsidence. So that's two submergent features, and now we're going to switch to emergent features. This photograph may look familiar to you, as it's similar to one I've shown already. This is in the Isle of Skye in West Scotland, and this is an area where raised beaches are commonly found. So this picture shows that there's a raised beach, and it's this flat area here shaded in yellow. And it's formed over the last 10,000 years due to isostatic rebound. So this is where the crust is slowly rising as the crust has no longer been pressed down into the mantle because there are no glaciers there anymore. And these grey rocks that, if I go back, are standing a bit proud. These grey rocks could be fossil cliffs. It's difficult to tell from this photo, but as the name suggests, fossil cliffs are remains of an old cliff face on a coast. And fossil cliffs obey the normal cliff rules that you learnt in the first inquiry question. So the dip angle determines how stable they are, whether you get headlands and bays if you've got a concordant or discordant cliff. Again, it's important to note that relative sea level rise from eustatic changes, i.e. rising sea levels due to glacial melting and thermal expansion, is not significant across certain parts of the UK coastline. Relative sea level is a function of both eustatic and isostatic changes, and even though global average sea levels are increasing, the isostatic changes occurring in Scotland are more significant than eustatic changes, resulting in these emergent features. Now, remember what I said about fossil cliffs on raised beaches? Well, we can have other relict features of coastlines. So this is something called Fingal's Dogstone. It's just north of Oban, which is a town in Scotland. And it is the remains of a stack, which is now currently 30 metres away from the coastline. So originally, the stack would have been at sea level, but due to isostatic uplift, the land has risen, causing this relic feature to remain. And it's called Fingal's Dogstone because the legend is that Fingal, who's a giant, tied up his dog whilst Fingal went off hunting in the Hebrides. So some people think that he would chain it up at the base, and that's why it's eroded more because the dog would round in circles. However, it is most likely the relic of a wave-cut notch and not a dog running around. This is a photograph of the King's Cave on the Isle of Arran. Alright, so it is just southwest of Glasgow. And it's so cold because Robert the Bruce wanted some refuge here. However, you can see again that there is no coastline in sight. It's just a lot of rocks. Okay. There is no waves coming up towards it because there's this vegetation near the caves. And so these relic caves have formed as a result of isostatic uplift. And so they are again another example of an emergent coastline feature. Now for both of these examples so far, so the stack and these caves, what sort of coastline would have been needed? Is it concordant or discordant? Well, if you had said discordant, Well done. Because remember, to get a cave arch stack stump sequence, we need a headland and therefore an alternating sequence of hard and soft rock. So this is knowledge that you could apply from previous inquiry questions in essays to show understanding of processes to form this coastline. So it's going back to what I said about RIAs, where what the examiners want is a series of processes that are contributing to the formation of these coastlines. It's not necessarily one process. A final type of coastline is going back to the Dalmatian coastlines. So these are named after the coastline near Croatia, and it's just a quick recap of what a Dalmatian coastline is. So please make some notes in your notepad or exercise books, or if you have some space on page 11 in your booklets. So a quick recap then. A Dalmatian coastline is a type of concordant coastline, and they are strongly influenced by structural geology. Tectonic forces have caused compression to cause folding, so when plates are moving, stress is applied to layers of rock, causing them to buckle and fold to form fold mountains, just like we discussed during tectonics. So this is a sedimentary basin, and what has happened is we've got compression, so we've got forces either side pushing it together and squeezing it together, and that has resulted in fold mountains to form. And so what we have is a series of parallel anticlines and synclines. Remember that anticlines, or antiform, are the A-shaped folds. Now, due to sea level rise, the anticlines now form hilly islands, as you can see in this photograph, and the synclines have formed these elongated bays. And this is an example of another submergent coastline caused by post-glacial sea level rise. So just like with the RIAs, okay, in the fjords, what has happened is we've got post-glacial sea level rise submerging the area, creating those elongated bays, where there used to be low-lying valleys, the synclines. And just like with the RIAs, examiners want you to think synoptically about formation of coastlines. So they want you to think about all the processes that have contributed to the formation, not just sea level rise or fall. So for Dalmatian coastlines, a top answer would discuss the role of plate tectonics causing folding to occur, as that is an important prerequisite for the formation of this type of coastline. So well done for sitting through that. I hope you've taken notes in enough detail. A recording of this will be put up in YouTube again in case you want to watch parts of it. What I would like you to do now is answer this question in your exercise books. Make sure you follow the success criteria. So I'm looking for 3 paragraphs and influence of other processes than just sea level change. So eustatic changes, isostatic changes, prerequisite coastline requirements, for instance in Dalmatian coastlines. I will post an example answer from the examiner's report and Teams for you to read through, and I will put up a poll for you to answer what mark you would give it and why. If you have finished the exam question, what I'd like you to do is make a mind map of the different coastlines you've learnt about today to consolidate your knowledge further. Make sure you include all the processes that contribute to the formation of that specific coastline. If you have any questions, please contact me on Teams.